And I'm going to wait a couple of minutes and just talk a little bit about what we're doing here today. So today it's my turn to present on the topics of, well, I kind of took a look to see who's struggling with what and what comes up all the time. Anxiety comes up all the time. Suddenly my anxiety is much, much worse. So we're going to talk about that. And then weight management. Weight management comes up all the time. And I just did a private session with someone today who was having a lot of luck, and then none of the things she has been doing are working anymore. So now she's got unexplained weight gain, but I think it's high cortisol. So when our stress hormone gets high, we pack on some pounds. And then the last one is addressing some of the emotional stuff that we go through, moodiness and particularly rage and boundaries, and how boundaries are, possibly going to help you with that. They did definitely with me. And it's one of the things that I say a lot with when you start to have anger issues, that it's important to look at the boundaries. So I do want to show so I'm going to do a screen share. And I have this little presentation up. So if I do it this way, I can see the presentation and I can still see us in the corner here. So I think I'm going to leave it like this and not do it as a slideshow, even though it doesn't look as nice. It means I can still monitor the group, but I can't see now people wanting to join us. So just see if I can get that up too. Okay. So I think I'm good now. I've got the participants over here. So I might be looking over into the corner quite a bit as well. And does someone want to just say hello in the chat? Because as soon as you type something in, it kind of wakes up the chat. And then if you guys have questions, you can feel free to interject with your questions at any time. And I'm more than happy to answer those questions. Thank you very much, ladies. I really appreciate it. Okay, so this is the first time I've tried to do this on this computer, so I'm not going to do the fancy presentation slideshow view, because then I can't see all of these other windows, and I want to be able to make sure that I can see if anybody needs to join and if there's any questions. So we're talking about the holistic view. So if you were there with Erin yesterday, you probably got an idea. The holistic view is quite different from our Western medicine, where our Western medicine looks at symptoms and treating symptoms to get them to go away. And honestly, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with that. And we are in this wonderful opportunity here to take full advantage and take medications. I take medications, but I also take advantage of the holistic view, which means we look at the whole person and the whole lifestyle and how that could be affecting how you feel, and then things that you can do that are simple. And then just clarifying that this idea of simple doesn't necessarily mean easy. Simple things are not necessarily easy, but they are simple to understand. And with a little bit of work, you can incorporate them. And I changed this to perimenopause to postmenopause. I think we're going to end up having to talk about menopause differently, and that it's going to end up being a spectrum, like autism is a spectrum, because there are women as they go through into postmenopause that are still having issues. One of my good friends was just telling me about that this week. So this is our safe space ground rules. Now, you guys are from the group, so you're familiar with some of this. Maybe, I don't know. It's an idea that I've introduced before. This is actually a Buddhist principle. Think before you speak. It's an acronym, and it means you pass through these gates. So if you were going to tell me, that my hair looks awful today, you would say, is that thoughtful? Well, I didn't necessarily take a lot of thought. Is it honest? Yeah, it could be honest, right? Intelligent. I mean, is it valuable to me? I've already started the presentation. I can't do anything about my hair. Is it necessary? that's the thing. Like, do you think about it later? Oh, shoot, I should have said that, right? Then that makes it necessary. Is it kind? Well, telling someone their hair looks terrible while they're trying to do a presentation is not kind. So it doesn't pass through those gates. And then you don't say that. This is what I do in my practice when I'm sharing information or commenting on someone's post in the support group or elsewhere on social media. I ask myself these questions. Is it thoughtful, honest, intelligent, necessary, and kind? And for me, if it doesn't pass all of those, I don't say it. Okay, so this is what support looks like. We've created a supportive culture. Culture is interesting because culture is something that we create together. I, as the leader of the group, can't insist that people behave in a certain way, but I can demonstrate what that looks like. And I can praise people when they do it. And I can ask people questions if they're not doing it. And I can remove people if they don't want to participate in being supportive of everybody in the group, including me. So we agree to keep each other safe by listening. We do a lot of listening. And if you don't like it, like the presentators that we had this week, um, the nurse was actually quite worried that I was going to disagree with her. But honestly, yeah, no, it's your presentation, so I'm not going to disagree with you, even if I don't necessarily agree. So let's be grateful that all this technology is working, that you can all hear me. I'm in my house, you're in your house. There's people here from Quebec and BC and Alberta and Saskatchewan, and maybe even Nova Scotia. So we're all going through a transition. Perimenopause is very challenging because we have so many hormones in flux and extra stress hormone. And menopause is not necessarily going to be of relief in the same way that we were hoping it might be. I thought my periods would just stop. And that's not what's happened. I am now on a pill to make them stop because I have endometriosis. And so they became incredibly painful. And it's better to be treated than to be in pain. Oh, look at that. It didn't do my text properly there. Oh, well. So the progression of female hormones, this is why we need to talk about this. So we didn't really learn anything about this in our education going through school. What is happening and why do we feel so awful? This is important that we get an understanding of it because when we start to have symptoms, when you have an understanding of why, you can be a lot calmer about what's happening. And then we'll talk about different ways to deal with the sudden anxiety, the weight gain, and the moodiness. Moodiness is very difficult for the people around us and ourselves. It makes us question who we are. Anxiety is a problem and it interferes with our day-to-day living. So that's not good and we don't want it to do that. Weight gain and why starving yourself and doing loads of cardio aren't working and what we can do about it. Of course, it's a lot more involved than what I can do in a very simple, short presentation, but it's a good overview. And then moodiness and boundaries. How are they related? Because they don't necessarily seem to be related. You wouldn't assume that they are related, but yeah, they are related, or at least they can be. So here's the progression of change. And I just like this photo of the girls dancing. They're just so sweet, these young girls. And then here we are a little bit older and this gentleman is participating as well. And we might not quite be in step. So when I was first learning about the hormone functions in the body and how this works, I want to see a picture in my mind. It's really important to me to have an understanding that's visual. I'm a visual person. And the idea of a dance really is an easy way to understand it. So if you think of it like line dancing, everybody knows what the next step is, and we all move together in a sequential way that makes sense. And this is the same with estrogen and progesterone. They have their flow and they're supposed to work together. And then oftentimes it's actually the progesterone that drops first. And then we have estrogen dominance. So we might end up being more moody and angry because the estrogen is your kind of go-getter hormone. And we need to try to find ways to level things out and come to a new way of dancing because we're not going to stop the hormones from changing, but we can support our hormones in their changing. So this is the progression. It's a progression of female hormones and what's happening. How is it leading us to feel so awful? I just can't anymore. I don't know if anyone can relate to that. But I used to do, at one point, I had 2 part-time jobs. I had 2 kids, I had 2 exes, and I was just rolling with it. I was working all the time, and I was able to do it and still sleep and still function, and I can't do that now. Why do I feel so awful in my body? And I suddenly have terrible anxiety. Well, it's how our internal thermostat has changed. We can't be bothered with the things that we used to love. Sometimes we're making excuses and avoiding social outings, especially driving at night becomes a real issue. And night driving and avoiding night driving is a sign that you need help, because we don't want anxiety to make our lives shrink and become smaller and smaller and smaller. That actually feeds the anxiety. Anxiety loves it. Oh, Stephanie can relate. I'm sorry, hon. um, but when we challenge that and say, okay, how can I drive at night in a way that's going to make me feel safer? Maybe I leave a little earlier. Maybe I have the instructions all laid out on a map. Maybe I have the GPS and I've tested it and I know that it works. Maybe I'm talking with a friend on my way there on the phone. Whatever we can do to help us feel more comfortable and not give up on our lives. So, here's some different ways that we can deal with the sudden anxiety, the weight gain, and the moodiness in mid-age. These are just some really simple ideas. So, food ends up being, oh God, I can't eat anything. The other car lights are too bright. I can relate to that too. But eat something yummy. Like, I'm not suggesting that you have waffles and whipped cream every morning for breakfast. You know, we're talking moderation here. But if you're really feeling like you need something supportive in your life and you're not feeling good and you really want that waffle, have some, but no guilt, right? We keep that in mind. It's a moderation. We have a moderate diet, and some food that's just for pleasure is totally reasonable in a moderate diet. The other one is dress in comfortable clothing. Don't force yourself to wear stuff that you don't like. If you don't like how it looks on you and you don't like how it feels on you, get rid of it, replace it. I pretty much live in comfortable yoga pants, but they're nice, high quality, comfortable yoga pants. And I have gone into work environments, like office environments, and had people be like, "Oh, I love your pants. Where did you get them?" They're Lululemon, right? That's just me. You don't have to wear Lululemon or yoga pants, but I'm very comfortable. And listen to some beautiful music. So this is a personal choice, but if you're talking about moodiness, so say you wake up and unfortunately with the anxiety, it can lead to this early morning sort of feeling of dread, like overwhelm. I just woke up and something is looming. I have the sense that there's something really wrong and I'm just feeling awful. Well, if you listen to some music that you like, and there's no point in me telling you what to listen to, because what I like is not what you like. You have to find things that you really like. And when I started experimenting this, I found that I love 1970s disco music. Anything disco gets me moving and makes me happy. And I listen to disco music almost every day. I have it on the TV channel and or YouTube. Almost always will get me up and moving and smiling. And then wonderful scents. This is something that we might forget about, but if you like the smell of lavender or if you like the smell of peppermint, you can make yourself like a cup of peppermint tea and just sniff it and it'll make you feel better. And again, it doesn't matter if you want to use essential oils and have an oil diffuser or a scented candle, or, like even just your favorite laundry detergent and, you put on that top that you just cleaned and you take a moment and smell it and see how you feel. It does affect your mood quite quickly. All easy, all relatively free. So here is one trick, the physiological sigh. So as you know, I mean, we've talked about it before. I'm always doing yoga trainings, and I recently just finished Ali Booth Reed's online yoga nidra training, and this is one of the things that she taught. So her teacher and my teacher too, actually, he's a psychologist and a PhD, so he does a lot of medical studies. And he was doing a study to try to figure out what kind of natural biological urges can we hack so that we can bring ourselves back down, because we're all in Western culture a little bit too stressed out all the time. And that's not good for our health in any way. And everybody knows that and agrees. How can we calm ourselves down? So they were observing children. And if you've ever seen the 2 or 3-year-old have a temper tantrum, they're just freaking out. Ah! And then at a certain point, they stop and they go, and they're done. So that was the question. Does that actually work for adults? So they would take the adult who's in a heightened state of anxiety and plug them in with all of their gadgets on the head and do the ECG and all of that stuff to check heart rate and get them to do the physiological sigh. And yes, it does. And for my own experiments, I started having heart palpitations shortly after my mother-in-law passed away from stress. And I was just really struggling with it, trying to figure out what I could do while it was happening. And so I thought I would just try this, and it works. It's not perfect. It doesn't get it to go away completely, but let's just try. So I'm going to demonstrate, and you guys can think I'm crazy or try it too. Either way, I'm fine. So 2 sips of air in through the nose. And you can hold as long as you're comfortable. If you're comfortable holding your breath, you can. And if you're not, you just open your mouth. But you want to do it at least 3 times. And sigh. Let go of some of that air and anxiety. So extremely simple practice, but it works. If you can remember to do it, that's the other thing. Sometimes, when we're really upset, these skills kind of go. That's why you need to practice it outside of being upset. So the anxiety, it interferes with our day-to-day living, and there are some cures from a holistic view. Yeah, Stephanie is learning and experimenting, right? That's what I want to see. Try different things. That's why my first question, is what's your most troubling symptom? And then what have you tried? Right? Because if you haven't tried anything, maybe that's why nothing's getting better. So is happiness the opposite of anxiety? Like, what is the opposite of anxiety? Well, it's not your circumstances. Like, you guys have probably all heard this, the person who wins the lottery and then 2 years later, they're broke again. And they weren't happy. They were miserable that whole time. And they've just gone right back to being broke. But when we're focused on the outside world and we want things to look a certain way and we want to have a certain amount of money in the bank and whatever all the things are, we lose our focus and we become easily just pulled off track and into that miserable state of mind. So when you practice labeling your thoughts, you'll soon see the patterns in your thinking. So that's why I always recommend starting with mindfulness meditation. So you might have, I think some of the other presenters did talk about meditation. So meditation, if we think of it like from a Buddhist perspective, we're trying to stop the thinking mind. We are trying to calm the monkey mind. These ideas are very interesting because the more you focus on calming the monkey mind, the more monkey mind you have. We know that for sure. But when you label that thought, so let's just say I just thought about dinner because I'm hungry. I'm happy to have dinner today. I'm happy there will be some food. That's the future. It's not happening right now. And then my hands are cold. Well, that's a judgment. That's a judgment. My hands are cold. when you label the thought, your mind just kind of goes, oh, I can put that over here. Like, is it important for me to deal with my cold hands? No, I'm cold. No one, that's not really fundamentally important, but it could be really distracting if I don't label that as a judgment. It's a judgment. Then you have to deal with it or not. Participating in community. And this is the thing. It's very sneaky, this support group that I started. I don't talk too much about the spiritual side of things or why exactly I started the support group beyond myself needing support. But there is a fundamental concept in any spiritual practice that basically says, if you really want something, give it away. If you really want to be loved, give love. If you really want to be calm, give that calm, peaceful energy to someone else. So participating in community, whether it's the support group or talking to a friend or, making the effort and starting a relationship with a coach or a therapist, these things will always lessen your anxiety because anxiety's job is to get you to deal with the threat that is currently happening in your life. And the problem with us is there is no threat. We're having a hormonal disruption. It's not life-threatening, but the interpretation for our bodies is to increase that anxiety so that we do something. And that's why if you pick up the phone, one of my clients said to me once, I said, when was the last time you talked to your best friend? And she said, oh, it's been months. And I said, why is that? And she said, well, because I've been sick. And I said, so you're so sick you can't talk on the phone? And she said, no, I don't want to like bum my friend out and be like, oh, I'm sick, because I don't really have anything else to say, but I'm sick. And I said, well, I think you should call your friend and let your friend be the judge of whether she wants to talk to you or not. Because I bet you anything she does want to talk to you, and she would probably really like to hear from you, whether you're sick or not. So that was on her homework and her care plan. And she called her friend. And sure enough, yeah, her friend wanted to talk to her and was concerned about her being sick, but mostly they just chit-chatted and laughed. And that's much better therapy for your anxiety than trying to force it to go away or ignore it. Practicing gratitude. This one I think is kind of like it's kind of a placated thing, go practice your gratitude. It kind of gets thrown on top of everything like salad dressing. But practicing gratitude is something that you can control. You can control how you interpret your circumstance, and you can control how you talk about your circumstance, and you can cultivate this feeling of gratitude. And the more you cultivate feeling grateful for the things that are working, like all of us woke up today, all of us have electricity, all of us have some kind of internet connection, all of us have an electronic device. Probably we had clean water and food. These aren't things that we need to, take for granted because it's not guaranteed for everyone on the planet. We are extremely blessed. And when you focus on that and surround yourself with that feeling of comfort and remind yourself, that you have a blanket, isn't that lovely? And a heating pack and Midol and whatever else around you. The more you practice it, the more you do feel grateful and the more you are able to express that gratitude towards the people in your life, which creates more connection, which helps you feel less alone, which takes your emphasis off your personal circumstances and what's not working for you and puts it back onto the people around you that you love so that they can bring you more good feelings and connection. And then the last point is laughing. I did a whole training in laughter yoga. And, I'm not into medical studies. I've probably mentioned that before, but I was fascinated by how many studies they have done that do confirm laughter is excellent medicine. And I just did a session with a client before coming on the call today. And yeah, she laughs. She laughed several times. And we're talking, this is heavy stuff. We're talking about the periods just won't stop. And she's scared to take the HRT, even though she got the prescription. And it's heavy, but we still made jokes. We still laughed. And at the end, I said, you're going to be fine. You know, if she can still laugh and have that struggle, that's going to take her a long way. So, what can you do in the moment when anxiety strikes? Some of us might have, I have more of a generalized anxiety where I just will feel kind of anxious throughout the day. I don't really have panic attacks, but some of us will have this like, oh, here's the sudden panic attack or the sudden anxiety. Don't let the anxiety win. Don't let the anxiety win. This is so important. Because anxiety, when you cut your friend out, or you cut your activity out, or you stop doing the thing that you're loving because you're anxious about how it's going to work out, the anxiety wins. And when the anxiety wins, what you're telling your body system on a holistic level is that it's true, it's right, and you should be anxious because you are under threat. And so you better make your life smaller and stay home and not contact anyone, which makes you more prone to being even more anxious. It's a vicious circle. So, anxiety is a safety valve. It tells you when something's out of balance, you've gotten out of alignment with your higher good, you're in danger, and you need to stop. So, biologically, that provides a great function to keeping ourselves safe, right? Like this is something that's been developed and it's been passed down through generations. And it's a biological function. It's not something that's made up in our minds. We didn't decide to become more anxious. Our bodies just do it. But the anxiety may stop us from living well if you buy into it, right? Remember the hormone dance. So, if talking about the hormones dancing, you can't talk yourself out of being anxious, just like you can't say, hey, progesterone, we need a little more progesterone. Come on, just do it, right? Or, hey, estrogen, stop dropping so suddenly and making me dizzy. It's not going to work. They're not functioning normally. The alarm bells are a result of that. That's why you're feeling anxious. So when anxiety strikes, it says don't call your friend. You ask if this is actually a functional anxiety. Does this have something to do with what's really happening? No, it doesn't. Go back to remembering the hormone dance. Okay, the hormones are out of balance. This is why I'm feeling this way. And then give yourself a little bit of time and space. There's nothing wrong with taking that time to feel the anxiety. Okay, I'm anxious about going to this class, or I'm anxious about talking to my friend, or I know I need to call the doctor. I know I need to get that blood test done, whatever it is. And then you think about, okay, do I want this in my life? Do I want more or less of this anxiety? Is it realistic? Is it actually trying to protect me? And if it isn't, then you just do it anyway. And it takes practice and it's very difficult at first. But when you do that, you train your mind and your body and your soul to understand that the anxiety in this case is not a protective factor, and you will become less anxious. And when you do have anxiety, you'll know more about what to do to manage the anxiety because you'll have these questions and you'll have a process and you'll have done it enough times. Eventually, it becomes second nature. So here's some cute gals and they're talking. Anxiety makes me feel powerless. And it does. How can I take my power back? And talking helps you. Talk to anybody. Talk to your doctor. Go back and talk to your doctor again. Your doctor became a doctor because they want to help people. Whether or not they've actually helped you, or that might be debatable. But they did go into medicine because they wanted to help people and they were good at math and science, which means they're smart. So you can talk to nurses, you can talk to your hairdressers. My hairdresser is excellent to talk to about pretty much anything, and she talks to women all day. You can talk to the friends in the CPMS group. There's some really great long-term members that are really happy to just have a conversation with you if you're having some, anxiety about something or you need a different perspective. You can talk to friends who have symptoms but aren't going to acknowledge that they're in perimenopause. That's actually quite helpful sometimes to see the level of denial that other people have about what it is. That helped me a lot to understand, okay, there is more at play here because this denial is so strong. That is one of the things that we are battling in this society right now. It's nobody's fault. It's just the way that it is. It's a protective mechanism that's become dysfunctional. So you'll pick people and, maybe you go talk to someone and it doesn't make you feel better because they say, "Oh my God, you're going to try HRT. That's poison." And, with that whole think acronym in mind, you don't need to be right and argue with them about that, but you can decide that's not your gal about HRT and talk to someone else. Talk to someone who's informed and aware of what the current information is, and maybe direct them to me and they can get their hands on that nurse uh, lecture because she covered the HRT like so well. Um, so most of us who do use medication at this point in our lives, just to reiterate about the antidepressants for anxiety, we can drop it once we're through menopause. So don't be thinking if you're really, really anxious, you have to muscle through it. If you've been offered to try an antidepressant, you can try it. And if it doesn't work for you, you can try something else. And if it doesn't work for you, you can try something else. I had to try 3, but most likely, most of us get through the transition and don't need it anymore. But hallelujah for those of us that need it. It's been amazing. I highly recommend giving it a shot. Taking BHRT forever. Yeah, and you can. You can. And it should be your choice. That's my opinion on the matter. Okay, the weight gain. Oh, suddenly I can't get away with anything and I'm doing loads of the same thing and the midline bulge. Ah, it's killing me, right? Very disorienting when you're doing the same thing and your circumstances are changing drastically in front of you. So take heart because it's not you. It's not just you. It's all of us probably because our metabolism is slowing down. We need to eat less calories when we're not menstruating. And this is important. I want you to notice this. Eating is largely habit formed behavior, very hard to change, and may see us reaching for comfort foods, right? This is why I say it's simple, but it's not easy. Exercise and movement is also habit based. This is what we're comfortable doing. Yeah, one woman I know won't join a gym. She was traumatized in the change room and she doesn't want to join the gym. So forever and ever, she's not going to. And that's her choice. And she doesn't have to join a gym. But there are other ways that you can work out, right? Going for a nice gentle walk. It's really good for you. So eat more protein. Eat more protein. If you pick one simple thing you can do that and move in a way that sparks joy. So I'm saying, maybe you've been running on the treadmill and you don't love it, or you've been doing cardio in some other way that you don't particularly love. You can just experiment with trying different things. So maybe you loved swimming when you were a kid. Go back to swimming. Go do some swimming. See if you still love it. Try it out. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. Walking. I love walking the dog. Weight training. I didn't like weight training, but I love what it does for my body. And so I do it in a way that is not painful for me. That if I have discomfort afterwards, I've got my rollers so I can roll out my muscles. I'm doing much better with that with the magnesium. And there's more suggestions here like eating healthy fats, fish, avocado, ground flaxseed, and whole grains. Whole grains, not cutting out the carbs completely, unless that's what you want to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I will say the scale is a bully. The scale is a bully. If you let that number on the scale make you feel bad, that's not a healthy relationship. I'm not saying you need to throw out the scale, but one thing that you could think about doing is just doing it less often, right? Myself personally, I feel like every 3 weeks. Every 3 weeks is a good time to do that comprehensive symptom list. That will give you a good idea if what you've been trying is actually helping. Every 3 weeks, do a weigh-in because your weight will fluctuate so much. Oh yeah, Claire, that's the great suggestion. The overnight oatmeal. I love that idea. Yeah, I've been doing the yogurt and the nuts and the berries in the morning. So good, right? And I'm not hungry. I'm not hungry. I feel really good. Um, and then the suggestion here is if you're going to pick something, you're going to try one thing. Don't try everything at once. So maybe you look at Claire saying, oh, overnight oatmeal with flax. I think I could probably try that. And you can add in a little bit of protein powder. Hmm, you know, why not give that a shot? That is a good habit and it's a good experiment to try. And you maybe do that for a week before you start adding in something else. Give yourself some time so that that has become a habit. And then you can work with a health coach for accountability and planning. The client that I had before today's session, when we were talking at the end, I said, you probably already feel a little bit better, right? Someone actually listening to you and hearing your whole story and your whole health history, and then coming up with a plan that's very gentle and tailored for you. And she said, yeah, because I don't have to do it alone. And you don't have to do it alone. Okay, so yoga has been shown many times through so many different studies. It does everything we want in perimenopause and menopause. It lowers your stress hormone. It increases your feel-good hormones, and the receptors inside your brain are activated so that you can get more of those feel-good hormones actually working for you. But we in Western culture, if you want to use modern language, colonialism, we latched on to the one part we understood, which was exercise. We like the exercise. We want to be skinny, we want to be strong, and we want to live a long time and be flexible. Those things are desirable for us. And we took everything else and threw it out. Now, it's all embedded in any yoga class you take. The teacher has had some philosophy and some understanding of how these asana or physical exercises have come together. But it's not a complete practice if you're not working on connecting body, mind, spirit, which is what Erin was talking a little bit about yesterday. So that's one of the reasons why we're comfortable in an exercise class or a yoga class, but then when we're asked to sit quietly, it becomes more uncomfortable. But this is because we have left out connecting. We haven't practiced that. It's just a matter of what we're comfortable with and what we've experienced. That's all. And when you become comfortable inside of yourself and how your body is functioning and become friends with yourself, your perimenopause and menopause journey will change. Simple as that. And the other thing I hear a lot is, I can't do it because, it takes too much time. Well, a full yoga practice moves every part of the person. So I can show you a warm up that takes about 7 minutes and it's a full yoga practice. It moves your whole body and warms everything up. So yeah, we have this idea in our mind and it's from that structure of the yoga class, but that's not what yoga is. That's just one part. And then mindfulness. That is an essential part of any yoga practice. We took the meditation out. We say yoga and meditation. And really it's this: yoga, meditation, movement, healthy lifestyle. That's how it should be. But for right now, this is what we have. So I'm going to show you another really simple calming breath. This one's really good for if you have migraine headaches, hormone headaches. Anybody getting hormone headaches? I started getting hormone headaches. That was quite eye-opening about how painful it is from the high estrogen. It's better now. The magnesium seemed to really help with that. And also being on progesterone. I'm on progesterone and that's helped. So I'm going to take my glasses off and just demonstrate. Now you can do anything you want with your hands, but this is more of a traditional way of doing it with the index and the middle finger on the forehead. And then we're just going to alternately block. So you block the right side first and you're breathing out through the left nostril. And then in. And then block the other side out and in. And you can do this as many times as you want. And when you get really good at it, You can do it without locking your nostrils and just do it with your intention. But minimum, at least 3 times. And we always end exhaling on the left side. So it's a complete cycle. Pranayama. Pranayama just means life force energy, controlled breathing exercise. That's very fancy. It's Sanskrit. I love that one. So if you ever do get a headache, that's a really good one to just experiment with. It's easy, simple. You don't have to think about it too much. And then I just wanted to put in some other yoga postures that actually are very helpful for perimenopause and menopause. So, with the exception of the downward dog, you wouldn't want to do that if you were menstruating because it's an inversion. So we don't want to do inversions. And it's a possibly flawed concept that the menstrual blood is not being helped to move in the direction it should if you're in an inversion. Personally, I think that's a heteronormative male patriarchal opinion, but I developed endometriosis, so maybe the inversions weren't helping me. I don't know. Just avoid that just in case. And you can do this up against the wall, so it looks a little bit differently. Child's pose, just be aware you don't have to have your knees close together. You can have your knees spread apart so there's room for the belly and room to breathe, and you can have the arms either behind you or in front of you. Pigeon pose can be hard on the knees, but you can do that laying on your back and just bring one of the legs in at a time and think that you're hugging that knee into the center of the chest. It's really therapeutic for the low back and very good for cramping. And then bridge posture. See how she's pushing herself up in the second one. You don't have to go that far with it. You can just do it like you're rocking the pelvis back and forth, up and down. Gentle rocking is really good for the low back and all of the hip flexors and everything moving down into the legs even. And it's very relaxing and calming. You don't have to do this like exercise. It's not meant to be forced, and forcing is actually probably going to work against you anyway. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like up against the wall, just to see how simple it is. So the full inversion of your downward dog, you'd have your hands on the feet or hands on the floor, but you don't have to go that far with it. You can just put the hands up against the wall and then step back. Oh, man, that feels good. So it looks more like this. I'm just leaning forward. But as soon as you get the support of the wall or even a bench, you get this beautiful hamstring stretch all through the backline body. And this can cause a lot of discomfort where we have just, I kind of think of it like the body's curling in on itself. Like it's trying to do this kind of curl in and go back into the pod form. And we have to work our way unraveling that tendency. Otherwise, we will develop muscle spasms and stiffness and soreness and piriformis issues and all of that stuff. So these are just some really simple ones that you guys can experiment with. And then why would breathing and yoga help with body weight? Well, think of it this way. All of the hormonal disruptions going on, your stress hormone goes way up. One of the things that happens with high cortisol is it tells your body that you're potentially in danger, right? You're in danger. There could be something wrong. There might be a famine coming. There's a war. There's instability. So you better pack on some weight because we might be heading for a famine. We might have just had a flood. So we need to hang on to as much as we possibly can so that we can live through the next crisis. It makes sense, right? We're preparing for that worst case scenario, and it's not something that your mind decides, it's something that your body decides for you. So my interpretation is that your body has interpreted the hormone fluctuations changing as a threat, because that's change. And it's the end of you creating new life, new babies, which could potentially impact your system, your social system, because you're not going to bring in any new babies after menopause. So we're hanging on to things because of the stress. And we know 100% scientifically proven again and again and again that yoga in any form, even if you're just doing meditation, even if you're just doing physical practice, lowers your stress response. It takes you to a calmer place. That's going to help you lose weight and be happier. But it's also why restricting calories won't work. So if you're already under this sense of threat, so your cortisol is high, and we restrict the calories, your body interprets that as more stress. Now you've stressed out your body even more. Now you're running from the bear on an empty stomach, which means something's really wrong. Otherwise, you would have had breakfast. And I'm not saying don't exercise before you have breakfast. If that's what works for you and you feel good about it, and after you're done, your body goes, that was great, do it. Listen to your body. But if you finish and you're like, oh, I'm so tired and depleted and unhappy, then maybe that's not for you. Right? It's got to be individual, and we can't just assume one thing or the other. Okay. Moodiness and boundaries, how these two seemingly unrelated things can get all mixed up. So I remember when I used to volunteer. This is how I learned about running support groups. I used to volunteer for family and friends of alcoholics and run support groups. My mother was an alcoholic, and I did that for many, many years. And boundaries was this subject that was just like, what the heck? And what does that have to do with anything? And it actually can be a huge, huge contributor to moodiness. So a boundary is something that we set, and it keeps us safe, and it keeps the people around us in a reasonable proximity, right? It's really important to think of it this way. If I'm an open book and anybody can come at me at any time and say or do anything they want, well, that's not safe, because I don't know that everybody in the world has the same level of personal ethics that I have, or even gives the remotest care in the world about anyone other than themselves. How many people are familiar with the term narcissism, right? Do they care about other people? Or psychopaths? They don't care about other people. We need to have a boundary in place to keep ourselves safe. Not everybody has deserved to know our home address and come for Sunday dinner. And one of the ways that I first started understanding this was like, if you have a cheesecloth and water, the water will run through the cheesecloth. You can think of that as the people that are closest to you that have earned your trust and that you love, and you just let them in because you know that you can trust them. They already know how far they can push you, and they're not going to push you beyond your comfort limits. But then everybody else is going to be kept out by the cheesecloth. It doesn't mean that good things don't come in. It means that good things come in, but the things that don't serve you don't come in. And we're not taught to set boundaries. Like, my mom probably didn't set any boundaries with anybody. And I heard it when I was 19 and started counseling, but I didn't learn how to set them easily until I started to see the cost to my relationships when I didn't set the boundary. So it became more about, I have 2 grown male sons, and I want to have close relationships with them. In order to facilitate and cultivate a close relationship with a grown male son, you have to be available, but you can't be in their face. And you can't let them walk all over you, or they won't respect you at all. So you can have an open door policy with them, but you have to have some level of a boundary there so that they recognize that you're a person too. Oh yeah, Mel Robbins, yeah, if they're upset about it, let them be upset. Um, and they will get over it. Anytime I've set a boundary with one of my children, I have one that he's married and he wants to do short notice all the time and it doesn't work for me. He was mad about it. He got over it. He makes plans with me. So what if I've told my family many times that I need help and they don't pitch in? This is a problem, right? This happens. Oftentimes, I think what's happening is they don't actually understand the gravity of the situation. My husband said to me once, "You say so many things in a day. How am I supposed to know which one of those things were actually important?" And he's right. How is he so I would start saying, "This one's important. I need you to listen to what I am saying now." And then just not do it. So if I say I'm not doing the dishes, I just don't do them. And everyone around me will adjust to that and eventually figure out that when I say something, I mean it. It's very difficult because sometimes you go to bed with the sink full of dirty dishes, and I do not like that. But I'm not going to clean up after someone else every day. So you lay down the law and then you're consistent. So as women, we've been conditioned to be nice. And that means sometimes we tolerate what is really inconsiderate behavior. Our hormones kind of contribute to that because we have this people pleasing at an all-time high to get pregnant again, and then progesterone drops. And so does our gentle side. So some things start to really bother you, and you will find yourself tipping over into the rage. Here's a great example. I had someone who was like, "I'm so angry and I don't know why I'm so angry and I can't deal with it." And then she tried to book an appointment with me. And 3 times she booked. And 3 times she canceled because someone else dropped a responsibility on her. Every time. "Oh, I can't because my son needs my help. Oh, I can't because granddaughter's here. Oh, I can't," and I said, "I think I know why you're angry now. You can't even get one little appointment time for yourself. In 3 weeks, we've canceled 3 times." So it's as simple as saying, "I'm not making you on dinner on Tuesday. It's someone else's turn," and then don't make dinner. I took my dinner to my room and ate alone, and my husband got the message. He did come check on me, and I was fine, but now when I say no, he means it. The door is temporarily closed. Don't forget, you have the right to close the door. You have the right to close the door. If you've had a bad day and you're cranky and everybody around you is demanding things and you don't have the wherewithal to do it, go shut the door. See how that feels. It felt great. I mean, I was still angry and annoyed and frustrated and anxious, but I could just do that alone. And it was much easier to do that by myself for a little while. And then I felt better and came out of my room. Remember your partner, especially if they're male, they're not tuned into your needs. I'm sorry, but they're not. They're not going to be either. You'll have to explain it and you'll have to remind them. And eventually they'll catch up, but they're never going to be sensitive and, tuned in and tapping in and anticipating. It's very hard to get a man to do that. So make sure that you're really clear about why it needs to be done and make it about your health. When I started saying things like, "I can't take that on because I'm not sleeping well, and that means I'm slow to get moving in the morning, and I can't do that. I can't do that." Kids like, "Oh, come and take my children and drive across town in the snow because it's more convenient for me for you to come get him or to come get the grandchildren at 7 o'clock in the morning across town." Of course, it's more convenient for you if I do that. But no, no, I'm not going to do that because I don't sleep well. I'm slow to move in the morning. I don't feel safe driving in the snowstorm. So no. And then you'll start feeling more comfortable about setting boundaries. And then you'll start setting them in other relationships. And then it'll start to get clearer and clearer. And people will come towards you. People will move towards you and your relationships will deepen. and you'll be less angry and you'll get more help. So what if you find it embarrassing? Like I found it embarrassing at first, like, oh, do I really have to ask for help with dinner? Like, isn't that obvious that dinner needs to be made every day? Why am I clarifying that? This is so embarrassing. I feel embarrassed for everyone that they don't get it. Well, I started thinking of it like a puppy. Puppy doesn't know anything. They don't know what's right and wrong. We have to show them. And it's like that with boundaries in relationships. We have to show people around us what it is we need, what it is we want, what's negotiable and what's not negotiable. And having someone consistently treat you in a way that's disrespectful, if they're over 12 years old, like a 6-year-old, okay, they don't really get it. They're growing up, they're having a hard day. All right. But someone who's over 12 is cognizant enough of other people, or at least has the capacity to become cognizant enough and recognize that you're a human being and you deserve to be treated with some respect, as well as they would like to be treated with some respect. And when I started thinking of it in terms of like, it's not about them being jerks, it's about they don't know. It's about they don't know. And how can I do this in the most gentle way? So you pick something easy, like changing plans with a friend. That might be a boundary, right? Maybe you did have that bad sleep and you were supposed to meet for coffee and you wake up and you realize, I could do it, but to do it, it's going to cost me a lot of energy because I'm not even awake yet. I'm just going to call them and say, you know what, hon, I didn't sleep well. Can we just have a chat on the phone? And it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Almost always they're going to understand. Or when someone asks you for a ride because they think it's easy for you to give them a ride, right? You're already going there. Just pick me up or I'll meet you. You can say, no, you don't have to help because they want you to help. And the more you practice these little easy boundaries, the easier the bigger boundaries get and the happier your life is. So, final thoughts. A lot of this can be just kind of boiled down into a mindset, and mindset can impact everything in your whole life because it's not what is happening. It's how you interpret and tell yourself about what is happening. And that will be what makes you miserable and sick all the time, or struggling with a health condition and finding new ways to cope. That's the same circumstance. I just described the same circumstance. But one leaves you hopeless and lost and suffering. And the other leaves you with a little room to grow. It doesn't mean you're not sick. It doesn't mean you don't have a condition. It doesn't mean you don't have things that you could work on. But it's not your fault. It's a circumstance the way that it is. And you have all of the power of that story of how you talk to yourself about what's happening. And that will reduce your anxiety and it will make you a happier person. And it will make people happier to be around you because you're a happier person. Don't overwhelm yourself trying to do everything all at once. Detach from the scale. It's just information. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you failed. It's just information. Try giving yourself easy things to focus on, one thing at a time. Like I picked reducing my sugar. I think I did that in September. And yeah, it was a very great experiment. And it really showed me how much sugar was affecting my life and my body. And yeah, I do need to continue on that reducing sugar. I don't call it cutting sugar out because I'm not going to cut sugar out, but I have continued to reduce my sugar. Then once that was established, it was a little bit easier to move on to adding in a little more protein. And that's something I'm still working on because that hasn't become a habit yet. And then the practice of being kind. Be kind to yourself first. I often remind myself that I am married to myself first. This is my primary relationship. I'm going to stay with myself until I die. So practice being kind and set that boundary, even if it's uncomfortable. You don't have to clean up after a teen, and you don't have to drive someone who doesn't need help. And if they don't need help, they can find another way of doing it. And then mindfulness will help you to observe and create healthy boundaries, because you'll become more aware when you're practicing mindfulness. Things will come in that you will then go, oh, that is important to me. I guess it's come up now a couple of times. So I will work with that. And a lot of the time when we set a boundary, we think it's a bigger deal than it actually is. The other person looks at it and goes, oh, okay, you don't want to drive me today? That's no problem. I can manage, and I will meet you there. Well, that's much better than going 20 minutes out of my way to try and pick up someone who actually doesn't need that help. So that is the whole kit and caboodle of my presentation, and we are at 5:01. So I do want to end the recording on time. And I thank you all for joining me, and I hope you learned something, and know that you are free to ask me questions at any time.